Hey everyone, I'm Wendy, and let's just get to crafting. For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm going to be using a plastic wreath board, an oval wood plaque, a scalloped plate from the spring collection, some 5/8 inch ribbon, some burlap ribbon, some zip ties, and then some rubber grip liner in the black, but I don't end up using the beige or the deco mesh, and you'll see why in just a second. So the first thing I'm going to do is sand the back of my plastic plate, and this comes in a pack, so I'm just using one. And then I painted both the plate and the plaque with my Waverly White chalk paint. And my plate needs 2 coats to make sure there wasn't any pink peeking through it. Now I thought that this deco mesh was a black and beige buffalo check, and it wasn't until I unrolled it and realized it was actually dark blue and beige. So I had to adjust my whole design using the black and white grip liner instead of the mesh, and this made the project a little more time consuming, but I think it's even cuter. So I cut the roll of liner in half, and that gave me 2 rolls at 6 inches each. And then I cut a scrap piece of cardboard down to 6 inches so I could speed up the process of cutting a bunch of 6x6 squares. So I rolled the liner around my cardboard and then cut the sides, and this made super quick work of the cutting. And I did this for both the black and the white. So to make this exact project, you're going to need 2 rolls of the white grip liner and then 1 roll of the black, because I'm making 30 squares of the white and then 12 squares of the black. And then at the end, there's a little end piece that doesn't quite make it to the 6 inches, so I'm just going to open that up and cut it down to the 6, and then I have just a teeny little piece left over. So I picked up a couple of these plastic wreath forms at Dollar Tree, but they're kind of warped. So I positioned it so that a flatter piece was facing toward the bottom. And then I'm going to trace around my plastic plate so I would know where to place my feathers. And then I'm going to start adding my zip ties. So to do that, I'm going to go down into one hole and then come back up in the hole right next to it. And then I'll pull it through the top of my zip tie just enough so that it stays in place. And then I'll go into the next hole and come back up in the one that we first started with. I don't know if you understand that. I don't think I explained that very well, but you can see what I'm doing right here. And I'll just do that all the way around on that outside row and stop when I get to the place where I marked my plate. Now I'm going to start making feathers by taking my square liner and folding it at the top and bottom into the center, and I'll overlap those little points, and then I make a tiny fold on the ends of both of those folds, and then I scrunchied it all up by squishing it in the middle, and then I fold the whole thing in half, pinching it at the bottom, and then tucking it into my zip tie with one hand, and then I'll pull it tight with the other hand, and it's snug as a bug in a rug. There's a whole lot of folding going on. But then I cut off the extra zip tie and move on to the next one. And even though there's a lot of these to do, it was really fun to make this and watch it come all together. So once we have our first row all done, we're going to move on to the next row. So I'm using the polka dot burlap and the plain burlap, and I cut those into 10-inch strips and dovetailed one end and then made a loop and folded up the tail, and then I put those together going loop tail, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to squish that at the end and then wrap a chenille stem around it, and then I'll twist it in the back to keep it together, and then I'll poke it into those next 2 holes and secure it in the back. And I'll kind of foof those around like we do with perky bows, and then I'll start my black liner squares. So I'm going to do the same fold for those black squares, and I'm going to go into the row further in, so I'm skipping a row of the holes and moving closer to the center, if that makes sense. And Dollar Tree also carries black zip ties. I don't think it would probably show if you did use the white ones, but I had these, so I thought I would use them. And then I'm going to pull those little pieces out and untuck them from under my loops. So then I decided to take some of the beige mesh and add that into my row of ribbons. and that will cover up any of the gray areas that might be showing on my wreath board. So I just take a chenille stem and secure it at the beginning, and then just start feeding it through, zigzagging and hot gluing it down to stay in place, and that covered everything up. And it also brought in some more of that grip liner texture so that it looked all cohesive and kind of matched, and I think it's super cute. Then for the center area, I took some buffalo check ribbon and folded it over 4 or 5 times on each side, and then found the center and made slits on both of those sides and fed a chenille stem through there and then twisted it on back. But I'm going to not foof my loops this time because I want to keep it flat. So I'll just open them up but not get them nice and foofy. And then I'll take that extra chenille stem and feed it through the middle holes. And then I started dovetailing all of the ends to give them a more feathery look. And since my plate is going to go on top of them, only part of this is going to show, but it also gives me something to glue my plate onto so that it stays put. So a little bit of the board was still showing when I put my plate on there. So I just trimmed that area and then I just bent it until it snapped off. And now that my paint is dry, I used some antique wax and dry brushed a little on my plaque and plate to give those edges some rustic, worn wood looking definition. And those are going to act as the wattle or dewlap and the caruncle of my turkey. I totally Googled that, so I don't even know how to say that. But that's that bottom part of a turkey's neck. And then I'm going to cut a little triangle out of a craft stick, and that'll serve as his beak. And then also a snood. Again, thank you, Google, which is that little piece that hangs from above their beak. So then I tucked my plate between my loopy feathers and then over the buffalo check ribbon and put a bunch of hot glue to keep it secure. And then I'm going to take my plaque, which is his head, and I'll glue that up toward the top. And you can always add some permanent adhesive in addition to the hot glue, but these are pretty light pieces, so they should stay in place. And then I painted his snood a light pink. I actually make it a little bit lighter than this, and then I'm gonna hot glue his beak right on top of that, but I'm gonna leave a teeny tiny bit poking out at the top so it doesn't look like he just has a runny nose, and you can tell that it's a snood. And then I'm going to place both of those onto his face where it should be. And then I used a Sharpie to make his little eyes. Now I'm going to give him some turkey legs by tying 3 little tiny pieces of twine together, and then with the extra twine I fed 3 PINECRAFT beads on there and then tied those to the holes in the board. And I was going to paint a sign for him, but I always keep my scraps, so I had this happy fall sign that was perfect, so I just glued that right on top of his caruncle. And here he is, all done, and I'm pretty smitten with this little farmhouse guy. If you don't want to make a turkey, I think this would be so pretty just as a regular wreath and going all the way around, or you could add a fall sign where his body is. The possibilities are endless, but I love him and I hope you like him too. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, we're using white and nautical rope, a bucket, and a burlap leaf. And so I'm going to take my leaf and put it sideways so that I can see where I can cover up my ends of my rope when I wrap it around my bucket. And so you can see here I kind of made a mistake at first, but I'm just going to start with my white rope down at the bottom. But I'm unwinding all of my strands and separating those, and then I'm just going to start where my line is and hot glue that all the way around, because the first one you want to get it in place and secure so that it doesn't pop off at the bottom just from moving it or whatever. So I'm going to go back around, and then once I get to my black mark, I'm going to cut it off and then hot glue that down again. And this is kind of, I don't know, it kind of came unraveled and was leaving little strings everywhere. So I decided after the second row that I would just go ahead and keep wrapping it instead of cutting it and wrapping it, because remember our leaf is going to go over that and completely cover it. But then I decided, well, there was a lot of those little threads popping out, but also I just kind of got lazy. So I just went ahead and started rolling it around, and then you know how it has the little bump up because it's going on to the next line. Well, it had that, but again, that's going to be covered up from the leaf, and the back side, which usually has all those seams, is going to be completely perfect, so that when I go to set this on my tray, if you look at it from the back side, it's going to be super pretty too. So I'm going to go all the way up, and then I cut off my excess when I got to that line so that it didn't go over that and it would still be under my leaf. And then I'm going to start with my nautical rope and do the rest of the way up with that darker color. And I think this is a super pretty way to jazz up any piece that has, especially if it's plastic, but anything that's wrapped I think just looks so nice and farmhousey. And so once I get to the top, I'm just going to cut that off and hot glue that down. And then I'm going to take my burlap leaf and then hot glue that over those seams. And then for this piece, I'm going to use a little ceramic container from the Dollar Tree, a candle, some orange and white gingham ribbon, and some scrap burlap from our turkey project. So I was going to paint my container, and I love anything that has a lid. I've told you guys that before. So I picked two of these up, but I'm just going to be using one here. And I decided first to try the acetone to see if those little colors would come off. And sure enough, it worked. So you do have to give it a little bit of elbow grease, but then I just took a regular rag and wiped off all of the ickies. And then I noticed the bottom of my lid was silver. And so since the top was gold, I thought maybe the acetone would work on that, and it did. So I just pulled off that gold and then it became silver, and we're going to make that a little rustic-y looking in a minute too. So now I'm going to take my burlap ribbon and just hot glue that around the center part of my canister, and then I'll go all the way around and then fold it down so that it has a clean edge, and then I'll hot glue that down as well. And then I'm going to take some of the orange and white gingham, and I love this ribbon. I really wish it would have been the orange and beige, but I'm out of that one now. So this will have to do, and it's still super cute, but I'm just going to wrap that around as well so we have a double layer. And then once that's in place, I'm going to take one of these pretty laser cut crosses that a sweet viewer sent me, and I'm going to take some white string and fold it over and then push that loop up into the side holes and then open that loop and feed the string through so that it grabs onto the cross. And then I'll put that right above the orange and white gingham and tie that in the back and make a knot and cut that off. But I think this is a super cute way to add a little Jesus into any project. So now for the lid, I'm going to take one of these decals, and it's a rub-on. Again, everything here is from Dollar Tree. But anyway, I'm just going to rub that on right into the center. And then I'm just going to use a squeegee and pull that off really gently, and just be patient with it to make sure everything sticks down. And then I'm going to take some Waverly Wax and Antique and just take a paintbrush and dab that all over there just to give it a more rustic look and knock down that shine. So then I took my candle and I heated it up in the microwave for 8 minutes, and I'm sure microwaves vary, so I'm not sure how much it'll take in your particular microwave, but I'm just going to be very careful and pour that into my canister. And then to stand the wick up, I made a little, I don't know, jig, I guess. I just took 2 craft sticks and taped them together with some painter's tape, leaving a little opening in the middle. So I'll just slide that onto my wick and then kind of press it together so that it stays in place, and it'll hold my wick up. And then once it dries, I'm just going to cut that off and it's ready to go. Next, I'm going to use a sign, another one of those fall decals, and then I wasn't sure which stickers I was going to use, but I end up using the little gnomes in the back there. So I'm going to paint over this sign that says "Sing to him a new song," and I did, but I had to cover this up for this project. And then once my paint was completely dry, I'm going to take this decal and center it right in the middle and then rub it on again just like we did before. And then I'm going to use that mylar or whatever kind of material that is that this decal is on to use as a template. And I just simply cut out a circle, and then I'm going to take my Sharpie and start making little circles around my decal. And then once I get my first circle down, I'm going to lift up that vellum. I had to look that up. It's vellum. And then I'm just going to make it a little bit off from that first circle and then go around that one. And I'll do that 4 times. I was trying to be a little messy with it, but I really went off the rails up at the top, so it got really messy looking. And so to fix that, I just made those lines a little bit thicker so you couldn't tell that it was a real mess up. So then I took one of these sweet little gnome guys, and I used the one that's holding a little mug, and so we're calling that pumpkin spice latte. And since this sign says pumpkin spice and everything nice, I think this is perfect to go right in the corner. And I love this sign just as it is, but it was a little bit too new looking, and since our soon-to-be tray is going to be full of rustic-y goodness, I had to kind of mess this one up with some antique wax and just weather those corners so it looks more rustic like the rest of our items. So now I'm going to take some PINECRAFT beads, and I'm going to take 6 chenille stems, and the first 3 I'm going to take and crisscross them all and then attach them right in the middle, and then I'll extend those with another one on each end. And then I'm going to take some smaller beads and alternate doing 2 small ones and then 1 small one, 2 small ones, and then 1 small one, so on and so forth at the bottom of my chenille stems. And then I'm going to start loading on, I think these are, I'm not sure if they're 1 inch or 3/4 inches, but anyway, they're a little bit bigger than the smaller ones, and I'm just going to feed those on to each of those chenille stems. And then once I get to the top, I'm going to take some raffia and add that around all that excess chenille stem, and then I'll cut off the longer pieces and I'll leave one that's still long so that I can wrap that to attach the raffia to that base of my corn. And then I'm going to take some jute twine and wrap that around as well and tie it so that it all stays in place and it's snug as a bug in a rug. And I'll have these beads linked in the description box below. So now I'm going to take some small little strips of 5/8 inch ribbon, and I'm going to make little snips right in the middle, and then I'll take some jute twine and wrap that around there so I can move my little pieces. And then I'm going to attach that to the base of our corn, between the corn and the raffia. And then I end up adding some baker's twine in the orange and white, but I'll do that a little later. So now I'm going to take some chalk paint in white, pumpkin, and maize, which is perfect. And I'm just going to do a dry brush effect over my beads, first starting in the white and then moving to the pumpkin and then to the maize at the bottom. And I actually, the pumpkin color, I added some other, I don't remember what I added, but this is actually from last year and it's still good. But it's not just the pumpkin straight out of the bottle. There's a little bit of something different. I can't remember the project I did last year where I had to have it a different shade. But anyway, it's still pretty and you can tell that it's an orange. And then to rustic it up, I'm going to take some Waverly Wax and Antique and just give that a super dry brush over the whole thing. And then again, for that powdery look that I love so much in white, I'll take some white and dry brush that over everything else. And so here's where I decide to add a little bit more orange onto this piece. And so I'm just taking some baker's twine and wrapping a piece around there. And then I'll make a sweet little bow by wrapping it around my fingers a few times and then tying it with that first piece that we wrapped around the bottom. So now I'm going to make a tray to put all of our little pretties on top of. So I'm just taking a Dollar Tree plastic tray and painting it with 2 coats of the white. And I didn't even paint the bottom because it looks like the white's coming through the bottom, so you can't even tell that it's not painted. And then I'm going to take some more of that orange and just using a Dollar Tree sponge brush, I'm going to kind of get it onto the side and then rub it along the edge of my tray, and that just gives it a really pretty enamelware look, but instead of the black, we're using the orange. So then I just placed all of my pieces onto the tray, popped a plant into our planter, and it's done. And I love how this turned out. I love the pops of orange, and it just looks so clean but still rustic and farmhouse looking. I had a sweet viewer comment that she has a smaller home and needed to see some smaller items being made, and so I have 4 here for you, and then I just took all 4 of them and put them on the tray. But I love this, and I hope you guys like it too. For this project, I'm going to be using a plastic bowl, some batting, a styrofoam cone, another one of my uncle's sweaters, and then this pumpkin stake. And I'm actually just going to be using the wire bottom part. So I painted my bowl completely white. It shouldn't show anywhere, but I just didn't want any of the red poking through my sweater. So I'm going to take the sleeve of my uncle's sweater and cut that down. And on the small end, I took a needle and thread and did a running stitch so that I could close that up after I turned it inside out. And this starts to go awry because I didn't realize how big I was making this. This piece ends up being just super huge, and I did not mean that at all. So if you do this project, I mean, you can make it this big and that's fine if you need it that big, but you kind of have to move furniture to make room for it. But it's still super, super pretty, but just make it a little bit smaller if you want to be able to fit it through the door. But anyway, I'm going to take my foam and then wrap it in my batting, and then I'm going to take that piece from my pumpkin stake and cut that off, and I'm going to feed that right into my styrofoam and then tuck that into my sleeve of my sweater. And then this is going to make it to where I can bend it, because this is going to be a cornucopia, and except it's going to be a Bionic cornucopia. And then I'm going to put my bowl into the front part of my sleeve, the larger part, and then I took some duct tape to tape that down so that it would stay in place, and then when I bend it up, it'll be going straight up or however I want it. So then I'm going to take the end of my sleeve and start hot gluing that inside to give it that clean finish. And then at the end, I wanted it to be a little more pointy, so I took some hot glue and just made it look a little bit more like a cornucopia and should be. So because it was kind of big and roly-poly, I found this little piece of scrap wood from a Dollar Tree sign, and I just hot glued that to the bottom of my cornucopia, and that way it was able to stand up better. And then I just added a little nail to make sure it stayed in place. So now I'm going to add some floral foam and glue that down inside, and then I'll start adding my greenery and my floral picks. So I'm using some Dollar Tree eucalyptus, some wheat picks, and just a whole bunch of different things. Again, I didn't realize how big this was going to get or how much it was going to need to be filled. So I don't know, I think I have 20 picks in here or something. It does turn out so, so pretty, and I do love the look of it. And it is perfect for my island countertop, but I don't know. I just didn't mean to make it this big at all. So I have some little veggies. I don't know what these are. I think they're, what are those called? What are those called, you guys? Pomegranates? Anyway, something. I just put berries and just all kinds of pretty picks with some cotton bolls, some mini pumpkins, some white sunflowers, and then I found some berries that were a little bit brighter, and I tied those together and poked that in so that they would flow over to the side. And then once I got that on, I'm going to take some raffia and just kind of unwind it and start grabbing bunches of it in my hand, and I'll poke those into the sides and around through the middle of all of that prettiness, and then just keep adding to it so that it covers that hard edge. And then I'm going to take 2 burlap pumpkins and place those on a pick, and I see what angle I want to put them at before I place my skewer into them, and then that way they'll be sitting the way I want them once I poke them into my floral foam. So now I'm going to make a big perky bow, and so I took 4 strips and I'm going to fold those in half and dovetail the edges, and then I did the same thing with that burlap fabric, and then I'm going to fold them over in half and then pinch them about 1/3 of the way down, and then just start alternating the direction of my loops. And then to add a little touch of that pretty orange, we're going to take some 5/8 inch Dollar Tree ribbon and just fold those over so that I've got 2 loops on each side, and I'll attach that right onto the top of all of these other little pretties and pinch those in the middle, and then I'll wrap a chenille stem around all of it once I crunch it all up, and then I'll foof my loops and then attach it to the top of my cornucopia. And here it is, all finished, and this is so big. It's so big, it's just wrong. But it is beautiful, and I guess God gives us overflowing bounty, and it's definitely showing in this piece. But I do love this. It is really stunning to look at. Again, I wouldn't have made it this big if I would have realized, and so I added some other pretties from other DIYs that I did to make it more of a vignette, and it wasn't just all cornucopia. But anyway, I love how it turned out, and I hope you like it too. I hope you guys enjoyed all of these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button at the very bottom, as well as the little bell right next to it, so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!